Thank you both. Okay, feel free to come and lie on the floor. And take the opportunity to just see what it feels like on the floor, especially if you've been upright or sitting a lot today. Beth, if you could you scooch up just a little bit? If you move your mat up a little bit, don't change you can just move your mat a little bit closer to the chair, maybe. No, other way, sorry, other direction. That's terrific, thank you. Great. And just notice, bring your attention to the length of your legs as you lie there. And whether for you there's anything noticeable about the left side of you, all the way from your shoulders, through your ribs, your pelvis, your leg. And then do the same kind of scan down the right side of you, from your shoulder, through your ribs, the space behind your waist, your pelvis, the way in which your leg lies along the floor. And just sense for yourself whether there's any difference between your two sides. And very gently, and only as far as is comfortable, just roll your head from one side and then over to the other side. And just notice at this stage of the lesson whether your head rolls more easily to one side than the other. Go slowly enough to really sense the relative ease of that movement, the quality of it. And then bring your head back to the middle. And just notice how the back of your head lies on the ground. And then in this lesson, we're going to be bringing our legs, bending out both knees up and standing both feet quite a lot. So I'm just going to tell you about a nice way to do that. So you can, let's bring your right leg up first by letting the right side of your foot fall out to the side. And then you start to drag your foot along the ground. Just start to drag your right foot along the ground until it feels like you want to stand your foot up. Stand your foot and bring your knee up. And do the same thing with the left. So let your leg roll out to the left a bit. Start to bring it up. And then you stand both feet and find a nice, comfortable spot with an adequate width apart where your two legs can stand really easily. In other words, with a minimum amount of effort. And I want you to think today about the idea of your skeleton. So it's as if, of course you are a skeleton, but we often bring to mind when we think about our bodies, we primarily think about our muscles and we let our bones kind of, go down and sink into the background a bit. And today I want you to kind of keep those bones in mind and see if you can let the muscular effort be really minimized. And if you can take your attention to the noticing your sort of skeleton on the ground with your knees bent, can you have a sense of your skeleton even in this position? And with that idea in mind, you might like to even put your hands up on your pelvis, just at the point where your hips crease. And just about where your hip joint is, which is quite close in near your groin, just where the crease is as your legs meet your torso. And start a movement where you just very gently take your right knee a little bit further to the outside. So you let your right knee drop a little bit and come back up to the start. Do that a few times. And again, bearing in mind your skeleton. So you're just going to let your right leg drop a little bit out to the side, but not so far that it's work to bring it back up again. Then you might notice under your right hand, you can feel the way in which your pelvis rolls a little bit to the right, a little bit, a little bit more weight on the right hand side of your pelvis, and maybe even a slight lift on the left hand side of your pelvis as you let your knee out to the side, out to the right, if you want to think about it that way, and then let it come back up again. And always do that just a comfortable amount. And you notice what's happening under your right foot. You might feel the weight or the sense of the floor shifts to the outside of your right foot, and then the whole of your foot comes back up. Beautiful. Pause when you have your knee back up in the center again, pointing to the ceiling. And then spread your feet a little bit further apart so that they're slightly outside the width of your hips. And make what will now be a smaller movement to take your right knee a little bit to the left, so a little bit towards your left leg. So you're going to take your right knee in the direction of your left, or a little bit to the inside, might be another way to think about that. And sense what else is happening in your skeleton when you do that, in your pelvis. Maybe now there's a slight lifting on the right side, or a slight weighting on the left side, lowering on the left side of your pelvis. And you can move your left leg a little bit further out if you want to see if it's comfortable to take your right knee a little bit further to the left. Just the amount that feels safe and comfortable for you. Okay. Next time your knee is back up at its starting point, let it go. Let both your legs come long and lie out on the ground if that's comfortable. If it's not comfortable, keep both knees up. But if it's comfortable to rest with your legs long, do that. And just see if you notice any change in the way you lie on the ground. Any change between the left side of you and the right side of you, or between you at the start and you now. And then bend both knees up again. Have your feet a comfortable amount apart. And start to take your left knee a little bit out to the left. And come back up again. Again, you can put your hands on your pelvis if it's interesting to see what you can feel through your hands at the same time. And what's it like on this side? Is there a different range of movement for this knee and this hip and this foot and this ankle for that matter? It can be quite different. How does your foot roll along the ground? What's your sense of your pelvis shifting, maybe going down to the left a bit and up to the right, or just lifting a little bit on the right? And then pause when you get back to the middle next time. And again, take your feet a little bit further apart so that you can start to tilt your left knee a little bit to the right. And again, what's that like on this side? Is it different from when you do it on your right knee? And again, what do you notice about movement, maybe in your pelvis, maybe even a little bit up into your ribs? Try to keep your right knee reasonably pointed to the ceiling. In other words, fairly passive, fairly quiet. And just focus on your left knee, your left hip. But of course, there will be consequences for the right side of your pelvis as well. And then let that go. Let that go and come and lie both legs long again. Just check in now with your breathing. Where do you notice your breath? Do you notice it just as it starts to come into you through your nose and mouth? Do you notice it in your chest, in your belly? Just let your breath come easily in and easily out. And then bring both knees up again. Stand both feet. And take your feet a bit wider apart. So a bit wider than maybe if you're on yoga mats, sort of towards the edge of the two edges of your yoga mat. And start to take your right leg a little bit out and a little bit in. So your right leg's going to go a bit right and a bit left. So it's going to combine the movements now. And again, sense what you can feel sort of skeletally in your leg, but also in your foot and also in the pelvis. Just very gently, left and right a couple of times. And then pause with the right leg. And then with the left leg, go a little bit out, a little bit in. And what do you notice about any differences for you between the way your left leg operates to do this movement and the way your right leg operates? And perhaps the rest of your torso responds differently between the different legs. And you feel free to go a couple of times between your two legs to see if that helps clarify things for you. Maybe you already know about yourself that you have a different kind of movement between the hip joint on the right and the hip joint on the left. And maybe you sense the movement differently up into your torso. And then pause next time both knees are upright. Just pause with your knees bent for a sec. Pause for a breath or two. And then you might want to bring your feet a little bit closer together again. It depends. I'm going to ask you to take both knees now. Take your both knees to the left and then to the right. And again, only go as far as is comfortable for you so that it's easy to come back up again. Don't go beyond the point where it's a real effort to bring your legs back up again. And again, just notice what's happening in your pelvis as you let your legs both tilt to one side and then the other. And how far up your torso do you notice something happening in your ribs, up under each shoulder? Beautiful. And then pause in the middle again. And now I'm going to ask you to take both your legs to the left and leave them there. So when I say leave them there, just find a place that's comfortable, no strain, for you to have your both knees to the left. So it might be just a tiny bit, it might be a fair way. And then bring your right hand and put it up on your forehead. So put your right hand up on your forehead. And if you remember what we were doing the other day, you were using your right palm flat to roll your head a little bit right and a little bit left. So just go as gently, make this a beautiful connection of your hand to your head. And then that gentle hand is going to let your head roll very gently one way and the other, only as far as feels comfortable for you. And as you do that rolling, notice, does it feel more comfortable to roll to the left where your legs are tilted? Or for you, does it feel more comfortable to roll your legs to the right? Just notice what you notice inside yourself as you have your legs tilted one way and your head going to the left. Sorry, we've still got our legs tilted to the left. I might have given an incorrect instruction then. So you're just rolling your head with your right hand. Okay, let your right hand come down and put your left hand up on your forehead. And continue with the rolling of your head. Still got your legs to the left. And is there anything different about this? Beautiful. Okay, let your head go. Sorry, let your hand come down and then let your legs come up to the middle, and then just a couple of times see what it's like now to tilt your legs to the left, tilt your legs up to the middle and then across to the right. And do you notice any difference between rolling to the left and the right now? And then next time your legs are in the middle, let them come long and have a rest. How does it feel now to lie out along the ground? What's the length of your legs like? The shape your pelvis makes on the ground? Robin, that dog just makes me laugh. He just came over to say hello to me. So bring both knees up again. And this time you're going to take your knees and find a nice comfortable place to tilt them to the right and leave them there. And put your left hand on your forehead this time. Again, make a nice connection with your left hand. And let your hand roll your head beautifully. Beautiful. And then swap over your hands. Put your right hand up on your forehead. And notice, is it different to roll with this hand? And what moves in your ribs? Is it more comfortable when your head rolls to the right or to the left for you? And then let your arms come down, let your right hand come down. And bring your legs back up to the middle again. And a couple of times, let your legs roll first to the right. Let your knees go first to the right, sorry, and then come back up to the middle. And then to the left. And just notice what might be happening with your head. And can you encourage your head, I suppose, to go in the same direction as your knees are going? So as you tilt your legs to the right, your head goes to the right. And as you tilt your legs to the left, your head goes to the left. And then pause from that, pause with your knees up in the middle and your head back in the middle. And then see if it's comfortable for you to take your head in the opposite direction to your knees. So that would be your knees go to the right and your head turns to the left. Only go as far as is comfortable. And then your knees go to the left and your head goes to the right. Is that a nice pattern for you? Is that a pattern that makes sense? And if you do like that pattern, what's happening in your ribs, behind your shoulder blades? Do you feel movement right up into your torso? Just let your neck be comfortable, only go as far as the movement feels pleasant and interesting. Beautiful. Good. Let everything come back to the middle and then let your legs go long and have a rest. Really let your body, really let that skeleton lie out along the floor. Sometimes when we think of the skeleton in the Feldenkrais method, we think about this really schematic idea that Feldenkrais refers to as the 5 cardinal lines, where your spine is the first line, running down from your head all the way to your pelvis. See if you can bring that line to mind. Of course, you can't feel it on the ground because it's inside, deep inside you, protectively inside you. And then the 2 lines made up of your arms. How do they lie on the ground now? And then the 2 lines made of your legs. How do they lie on the ground now? And what would be your sense of the relationship between those 5 lines? And then, of course, you have the important part of your skeleton, your skull. And just notice how that lies on the ground now. And just very gently roll your head from one side to the other and see how that's feeling now. Just very gently, one side and then the other. Beautiful. The next time your head's back in the middle, pause and bring both knees up to stand, your feet to stand again. And maybe just once or twice, see how it's feeling to take your knees right and left. How much of your torso joins in with this movement, where your head goes. And then next time both knees are to the left, can you leave them in a place that's comfortable to leave them? So have both knees tilted a bit to the left. And can you put your right hand beneath your head? So put your right hand at the back of your head, nice comfortable spot where your hand cups the back of your head. And again, thinking skeletally, so it's not a muscular effort of your neck. Can you think about, and it can be a tiny movement, you're just going to use your right hand to bring your head up a little bit, as if to look in the direction of your right hip. You're just going to lift your head a little bit, as if to look at your right hip, and let it come back down again. Do that a couple of times. Always let your head come right back to the ground in between. So it's not, it's not a crunch we're doing here. You're just using your hand to very gently lift your head. And you might sense that as you lift your head to look at your right hip wants to move a little bit closer to your head, not as if they're going to meet each other. So can you sense that your right hip might want to lift a little bit at the same time as you bring your head up with your right hand? And then let that go. Stay tilted to the left, but take your right hand out and let your left hand come behind your head to support the back of your head. And again, when you're ready, very gently, you're going to lift your head with your left hand as if to look at your right hip. You don't have to come up that far. It's just in the direction of. And sense what that does to your torso. Notice your breathing. What breathing pattern works for you to do this easily? Do you lift on the out breath and come down on the in breath? What makes sense for you here? Okay, let both hands back down. Let your left hand come down. And then just see what it's like. Let your knee come up to the center. And then see what it's like to tilt your legs left and right again. And what's moving? What do you sense in your ribs, in your pelvis, in your shoulder blades? Beautiful. Stretch out and rest again. Let your legs go long and rest. Okay, now bring both legs up again. Have your feet standing. And this time you're going to let both your knees go down to the right. Just an amount that's comfortable. And bring your left hand behind your head. And when you're ready, think about using your hand to bring your head up just a little bit to look at your left hip. And then notice whether you sense a bit of compression in the ribs on the left as you lift your head, and look a little bit in the direction of your left hip. Making sure you rest fully as you bring your hand and head down each time. And then bring your head back down again, let your left hand come out, rest your left hand, and then bring your right hand underneath your head. And again, maybe just a couple of times, use your hand to lift your head, to look at your left hip or in the direction of your left hip. Sort of diagonally across your body. And then let that go. Let that go, bring your arms out, and then just see what it's like to tilt your legs a little bit to the left and a little bit to the right. Beautiful. And let your legs go long and have a rest. Again, notice your breathing. Notice the length of your legs. And sense now what the right and the left side of you are like. Do they feel more like each other? Or does one leg still feel longer than the other? Or just differently arranged on the ground? Okay, now bend both your knees up again. Stand your feet. And this time you're going to take your knees again to the left and leave them there. So find a nice spot that they can stay comfortably. And then can you let think about bringing your left arm along the floor so that it can lie up. You might only like to let your left arm be straight out or up higher, depending on what's comfortable for you. And then take your right arm and bring it a little bit closer to your body. And you're going to make a bit of a diagonal and then have your right palm facing the ceiling. And I want you to think about a very small movement where you might take your right hand a little bit closer to your right hip. So, or to your right, I guess, in the direction of your feet. So you're just going to let so you're just going to slide your right hand maybe a tiny bit along the ground towards your feet and back again. And you can keep your left knees static out to the side here, or you could see what it's like to take your knees back up to the middle. And then as you take your knees out to the left, you can take your hand down to the right and see whether a bit more movement makes your right hand move a little bit more easily along the floor. Just see what that's like for you, whether you have a sense that your right hand wants to go a little bit down in the direction of your feet as you take your legs to the left. And you might notice a consequential shortening of the ribs on the right, and maybe a kind of lengthening of the ribs on the left. And then pause maybe next time your knees are back up in the middle. And this time you're going to be doing the same thing of taking your knees to the left, and you can either leave them there or you can try with the movement. And imagine that your left hand is going a little bit away from you along the floor. So take your attention now to your left arm. And as you take your knees to the left, think about taking your hand just a little bit away from you. It just might, along the same trajectory that it's already on, I suppose. So as you take your knees a little bit to the left, think about the arm just pushing a little bit further away from you and then coming back a little bit closer to the body as your knees come back to the middle again. So that might feel like a stretch in your ribs on the left, maybe. Or maybe this feels like a stretch in the ribs on your right. And then very briefly, see if you can think about stretching both your hands. So your right hand goes a little bit down towards your feet and your left hands go a little bit up. A little bit like I'm pulling you in a couple of different directions at once. Or your chest is widening, maybe that's the way it feels to you. At the same time as your knees are tilting to the left. Beautiful. Gosh. And let your arms come back down by your side. And then just a couple of times, tilt your legs a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right. And again, see what's moving. Where does your head want to go? Does it lighten behind the opposite shoulder? Can you sense your ribs opening? Beautiful. And then next time your feet are up in the middle again, take a pause and let your legs come down long. Feel your breath coming in and out. Maybe roll your head once or twice to the right and to the left. See how soft it is now. It's interesting, really, because what we're exploring here is the relationship between the ease of movement in your pelvis and your hip joints, with ease of movement in your head and neck. And then pause next time your head's in the middle. Bring both knees up again. Have both feet standing. And this time take both your knees to a comfortable place on the right. And then let your right arm travel up along the floor to a comfortable spot out to the side, near your head if that's comfortable. And have your left hand a little bit closer to your body and your palm looking up to the palm upwards. Then again, a bit like we did before, you can try with your knees static to the right, of taking your left arm, a little bit closer to your feet, or a little bit further along the trajectory that you're at. Or you can try bringing your knees up and then back down again. And then with that movement, taking your left hand a little bit closer to your feet. And then as your knees come back to the middle, your hand returns a little. See what you notice about that. You might notice your ribs sort of closing up a bit on the left-hand side as you take your hand a little bit closer or in the direction of your feet. Beautiful. And the next time your knees are in the middle, pause for a sec. And then now take your attention to, as your knees turn to the right, as your knees bend to the right, think about extending your right hand a little bit along the floor. Just maybe a little bit. Have a sense that your right hand, you might sense it moving along the floor a little bit as you take your knees to the right. And you'll feel your ribs opening on that side. Pelvis tilting. And then pause. And then if you can think about it, you're going to take your hands, if you like, a little bit away from each other as you tilt your knees to the right. So your left hand's going to go down a little and your right hand's going to go away. Both hands are going to go away from you a little bit. Your chest is going to widen a little bit as you tilt your legs to the right. And what sort of breathing makes sense to do here? What does your head want to do? Just notice what those relationships are like to make this really comfortable for you. Beautiful. Next time you're back up in the middle, let your arms come back down. And then just once or twice, see what it's like to take your legs a little bit right, a little bit left. Does your pelvis roll easily now? Do your legs want to go a little bit further than they did before? Does your torso want to respond? Where does your head go? Beautiful. And the next time your knees are back up in the middle, if you're ready, let your legs go long. And see what you notice about lying on the ground now. What's it like behind your shoulders? Your sense of your ribs, the space behind your waist, the way your pelvis lies on the floor now. And in the two lines of your skeleton in your legs. How long do they feel? And the two lines of your skeleton in your arms. And then when you're ready, just start to roll that skeleton to the side in the easiest way you can, and come up to sitting and then up to standing. And then once you're standing, see what it feels like to be up on your feet again. What's your sense of your feet on the ground? Your pelvis over your feet, your shoulders over your pelvis. Just in that position, see what it's like to look a little bit around to the left and around to the right. You might even like to swing your arms around a little bit. See how that feels. Can you sense that swing from your pelvis? Beautiful. Stop the recording.